Hello, everyone. Mr. K here again. We're going to talk about suspension systems today, and this is just part one. So all we're really going to talk about is we're going to review tires and wheels real quick, make sure you're fresh on it, and then we're going to get into wheel bearings and how the different designs and types and how you service those. And that's all we're really going to do today. All right, we're going to talk about, of course, tires, wheels, different types of wheel bearings, and how do you service them. Simple enough, right? So let's review real quick. Markings on the sides of tires, because we're kind of working our way through suspension, and of course tires and wheels have a lot to do with that and play right into it. So let's review a little bit with tires. Remember the markings on the side of the tire. There's your width, there's your aspect ratio, or your height to width ratio. So I guess the way I remember this is that the first number is the width of the tread, and your aspect ratio, the higher that number, the taller the tire is. So not necessarily the wider, but the taller. That's kind of how I remember it. And then, of course, your rim diameter is the very last number. There's your cutaway of a typical tire. Remember, the tire seals at the bead. It seals right in this area. Okay, so that's what matters. That's what's got to be clean when you're popping a new tire on a rim. Load tires are rated for different loads. Okay, this is more of a truck tire here, but notice it says right on the side, maximum load 2,830 pounds at 80 psi cold. So that tire can support about 2,800 pounds. And it's a load range E as in Edward. Okay. Here's a quick chart. Again, this is more of a truck tire chart, but that's what you guys typically are dealing with anyway. So notice the load range has to do with how thick the tire is, how many plies it is, and then you can see the load rating for a tire. And single means a regular single axle. It's not a dually like the right side. Okay, so let's find our load range E right here, 10 ply. So it's like a 10 layer tire. That's a real heavy duty tire. 3,500 pounds per tire. Okay, makes sense, right? Just gives you a rough idea. Okay, enough about tires. I think you guys remember that. Wheels. This is what's typically not remembered correctly or messed up here. If you're looking at, this is a cutaway, so we're looking at the wheel from, I guess if you were standing in front of a vehicle looking straight at it, this would be kind of the view you're looking at. So here is the, let's see, street side. Yeah, so this side would be facing out. This side would be facing into the vehicle. Some specs you want to remember: your bolt circle diameter, so your lug circle, that's just the measurement from one end to the other. The diameter is not the outside of the wheel from here down to the bottom. The diameter is right here where the bead actually seats. That's a common mistake. The offset, this is a common mistake also. Don't confuse the offset with the back spacing. Okay, offset is that mounting flange, how far off it is from the center line of the wheel. Back spacing is how much space between the edge of the rim and where that mounts. So don't confuse those two. Just another diagram, because like I said, that's confused a lot. Okay, showing different back spacing. Right, street sides on the right. So there's a lot of back spacing. There's medium amount and there's hardly any. Okay, they're calling that a negative offset, a zero offset, or a positive offset. All right, another thing with wheels, a couple different, mainly just two different kinds. I'm just going to split them into the materials they're made by. So this would be steel wheels. That's what they look like. They're a cheaper option. You can put wheel weights anywhere on them on both sides. See, their wheel weights hanging off there. Okay, pretty easy to balance, but they bend easily. They're cheap. If you hit them with a curb, you're probably going to put a rash on the side of them. Probably going to bend them. And you can use soapy water to mount tires onto them. We'll get to the other wheel. You'll see why that's not a good idea. Hopefully when you see these, you're thinking of aluminum wheels or mag wheels, magnesium. Of course, they're more more expensive from the factory. It's typically an upgraded option. Your book will tell you should use sticky weights on these. You will see tire shops all the time use clip-on weights like they do with the steel wheels, but technically you're not supposed to. And you should only use tire lube like Ruglide or Murphy's tire lube. You shouldn't be using soapy water because soapy water, when the bead pops, it gets trapped between the aluminum and the rubber, and it can cause corrosion, and then eventually you will not seal in the bead and you'll have tire leaks. So your book will tell you only use tire lube. You can't just use soapy water on these. Okay, the reason why I put this picture up here, this is aluminum wheel. Notice something. Why does it have corrosion just right there? Why is the rest of the wheel just about perfect, but just right there in that little rectangular shape, it's corroded? All right, so why is that little rectangle corroded, but nowhere else is? Wheel weights. Someone stuck a wheel weight on here, and in the wintertime, when you go through those salty, nasty roads, those wheel weights hold that salt against and water against this aluminum, and it turns into that. Okay, it crumbles away. Don't use wheel weights on aluminum rims, especially, I should say that, don't use clip-on weights, especially on the outside that faces the road. I don't know why people do this. You should be using sticky weights. They're not that hard to use. They're not expensive. You should use sticky weights on aluminum rims, okay? Don't let this happen. That ruins a perfectly good set of aluminum rims. Okay, so there's enough review about tires and wheels. Let's jump into it. There are different kinds of systems for wheel bearings. This is the old school system, common from, boy, probably the 1920s all the way up through about 99, maybe 95. You see this. You certainly see it in vehicles newer than that, but that's probably the big era for it. I'm going to call it a tapered roller bearing setup, and it's adjustable. Again, used on front of two-wheel drive trucks and rear-wheel drive cars, approximately pre-2000. Okay. Notice this is different. You don't have tapered roller bearing here. You don't have all those pieces, the races, all that type of thing. It's just a wheel bearing just hanging out right there, and you've got a clip that holds it in this side and on that side, and you just press it in. That's it. And Ford, I just know for a fact that the Ford Focus has this because I've had to work on it before. But just newer, usually lighter weight vehicles, smaller cars, that type of thing, have this type of setup. It's a compromise. It's still cheap to replace a wheel bearing on this compared to the next setup we're going to talk about, but it's more labor intensive than the previous slide. Here is kind of the heavy duty, again, SUV, small truck setup. The wheel bearing, everything is just contained in this little assembly. Everything's right there. And on GM, it's also containing the ABS rotor or the toner ring or whatever you want to call it in there as well. It's all one unit. So that means dollar signs, right? It's expensive, like $180. If your wheel bearing goes out on an Acadia, it's $180 because you have to replace this entire unit. Whereas if your wheel bearing goes out on a 1980s or 90s truck, it's about $6. The good thing about this is there's no adjustment, if you want to call that good. You don't have to torque anything. Well, you have to torque it down to hold it in, but you don't have to worry about adjusting the actual bearings. And you will see this set up a lot, unfortunately. All right. So let's go back to this setup again, because this is the challenging one. The rest of them, you guys can read the manual and figure out what to do. This one, you kind of have to try it in class. You kind of have to practice. So let's go back to this and learn how to pack these bearings when they're new. Go ahead and watch this video. All right, you should have just watched that video. It shows you how to pack bearings. You guys are going to have to do that. Once you pack these adjustable roller bearings and you go to reassemble them, there's a special procedure too. It's not just a torque. It's not just, oh, torque it to 30 foot-pounds or 100 foot-pounds. You torque it and then you loosen it, and then you torque it to a different torque and then you loosen it, and you just keep doing that over and over again. It's kind of an interesting process, and if you follow the manual and you do it all correctly, it does work, but you've got to do it correctly. Go ahead and watch this video this time. I'll give you a preview. Okay, should just watch that video. Hopefully that gives you an idea of how tapered roller bearings are adjusted and or installed. It's going to be different for every vehicle though. This time, go ahead and complete your assignment on Suspension Systems Part 1. And have a good day.